Hi, this is John Hilbrand. Today I'm going to talk about a particular problem that happens on stereo installation, and that is when you need to replace the existing amp or do what's called an amp delete, which is where you run the wires from the stereo directly to the amp outputs. So you're skipping the amp, and there's a little wire plug that plugs into, you unplug the old amp and you plug it into the new amp delete wires, and the amp delete wires come up to the stereo. So you're skipping the amp. That's called an amp delete. And the third issue is when you do an amp delete, you may have what I have, which is 2 ohm speakers, which would mean you might need to replace your speakers. So I'm going to be a proponent in this video of replacing the amp, but this is a particular amp. This is called a Class D unit, and if you read about it, it'll say it comes with 16 gauge wire to connect to power. Crutchfield does recommend 12 gauge wiring, but if it comes with 16 gauge going into the unit, I would imagine using 16 gauge is fine. And which means you can essentially use your factory wiring. And in my case, I was able to use, let's see if this can get some a little more light in there. I can use the original factory location. Talk about sweet. So this, boy, I don't know why it didn't stay on. So this, factory location has a metal plate. It has 2 screws on it, and the third one is behind my glove box. So this aluminum plate comes off. I basically screw the new amp onto that metal plate, put it back in position, plug it in, and take my existing power supply to the amp and go into my new amp. Yay! And the next issue is, of course, the wiring. So this had 2 plugs. This plug is basically unused. It's all the digital connections. And this is the wiring that had a plug on it, but it's now going to the new amp. So essentially, let's actually look at what the device came with. You can see that it came with some RCAs and some wiring and some zip ties. So it basically had everything I needed in there to do the new amp. And by the way, look at the price there, $95 currently. So nice unit. And so basically it had the RCAs. So the RCAs, basically the head unit, the new head unit that you've installed, can go directly into the top here. My head unit had an RCA output, and then it goes to this input. So the right fronts and the left fronts and the left rear and left right rather, and left rear and right rear. It goes into the top of the amp, and then the bottom of the amp is right here and has this output going to the wiring. Now you'll notice that it has these big tubes here, and these are called bass blockers. And so the reason why we need a bass blocker is the original stereo amp took the leads for the tweeter, and when they came out, they went into the amplifier and it controlled the frequency. But now it's not controlling the frequency unless it's controlling the entire channel, and we don't want to devote an entire channel to just the tweeters, because we only have 4 coming off of our stereo, and otherwise we wouldn't be able to use fader and right, all of the fading and the left and the rears from the stereo. So we want to combine them with our woofer. So essentially we'll take the bass blockers, and as the tweeter wires come out, connect the 2 tweeter wires into the bass blocker. The output from the bass blocker join with the right front woofer and go into the right front amp. When I got my stereo, we did get the interface. So people will say, well, why didn't you just use the interface? You wouldn't have to replace the amp. Well, I did get the interface, and the interface essentially takes the digital, converts it to a digital signal that then is going to go to the body control module, and the body control module will turn on the amp and also send the signals to the right speakers. But the problem is we tried two different interfaces, neither worked. This one that's in there right now, I actually did use it, does have the steering wheel controls, but you know, I don't know about paying $150 for a body control, for an interface, when all it's doing is, you know, steering wheel controls. It seemed like a waste to me. And I was originally thinking, you know, this old van or old pickup truck wasn't worth even the stereo, let alone paying more. But, you know, it is kind of nice as I'm driving along. I'm switching the channels and everything else and changing the volume. So it is kind of nice, and I'm kind of liking that I did it. One of the things a lot of times people talk about is you don't really regret installing something right. You only regret installing something cheaply. And so I am liking the fact that I did this. Let's talk about this Class D device a little bit more. The fact that this is small and it fits in the original location really makes this installation come together. You really want a factory location. You notice it's only 400 watt. Class D does have much better power management, and it doesn't get all that heat that it comes with a 16 gauge wiring for its power. So you notice the power line that comes from the factory is the same size as the power line that's going to the amp. So there really isn't an issue with underpowering it. We have a fuse that's serviceable right under this plug. So it's right there and handy. We do have one more wire coming from the stereo. Other than that, it's all the speaker connections, and that's the remote turn-on wire. So you do have to make sure the remote turn-on wire gets to the amp to turn it on. And then it will turn on and off with the car's power. That might be controlled by the interface, so maybe the interface helped me with that. But let me talk about if you did the amp delete. If we did the amp delete with the 2 ohm speakers, one of the things that I was checking into was replacing all my speakers, and just so that I could not have to deal with the amp issue. I was just going to bypass it, and then I actually talked to Crutchfield what would happen if I ran it with my head unit, the 2 ohm speakers, 2 ohm woofers, and they said that it would sound garbled and it would probably overheat the head unit and break it. So don't do that. Even if you don't talk to Crutchfield, use my advice. Don't do that. I'm just going to trust them that would have happened. And this nice amp, really good system. It does control the 2 ohm speakers. You can see that we could do 4 at 2 ohm and we're perfectly fine. It came with everything I needed to solve my problems. And had I been directed to this particular amp, I would have so much appreciated it. And for $94, snatch the thing up. The sound on this, my son had appropriated this car from me, and so when I got it back, the stereo didn't work, along with a lot of broken things. So I'll be fixing things as I now that he has a new car, I'll be fixing things as I go along, including the paint and everything else. And I actually sold my third car and just went back to this pickup truck when he gave it back to me, because the truck is awesome. Even though it has 150,000 miles, it just has some bad issues with it that I have to take care of. I'm going to be repainting it myself, doing, replacing the steering wheel wind, fixing that. But I don't want to spend a bunch of money on things, so I'll be doing a lot of this stuff on the cheap. But we'll see what we can do for it. And as far as do you amp delete or get a secondary amplifier? I think this this amplifier is really good. You will need, if you have the tweeter system, you will need the bass blockers, and you will need to. And what I did is I cut the wires on the second plug, and but I had the diagram from Crutchfield, so I knew which wire went to my new amp. And I don't think there's a reason why I would ever go back to plugging things in. So I know you can get a plug to go into a plug if you found the right one, but it was kind of costly, and I didn't really see the advantage of having more wire in that location. So I just cut it and then did a good system of crimping. I like to crimp a collar, just a solid copper collar, and then I do, you can kind of see one right there, and then you can kind of see that I just do shrink on it. And so all those yellow things are my shrink, and it makes a nice assembly. And then tape up the loom, and then it goes all behind the kick panel, and you're set. So I hope this video helps you get the system that will work for your car if you have an interface that isn't working properly, or even if you choose to not use an interface and you just want to have the amp work directly. I would caution you using an amp bypass, though, if you have 2 ohm speakers, because that's a no-no. All right, this has been John Hilbrands. I hope this video helps you, and give me a thumbs up if it does. Thanks. Bye-bye.